to come talk about. Hello. Are you crying? If you're not crying, you are dead inside.
Not human. Thank you so much. This is such a great film. It's beautifully made, and it's so uplifting, and it's charming, and it's funny. I mean, you don't usually get all of that in one movie.
I know, and about a flaming hot Cheeto. No, let me tell you, tone was the hardest thing about this film. I read the original script, and first of all, thank you all for being here. Thank you so much. I don't know if you all know it's pouring rain outside.
So diehards.
Yeah, you guys are diehards. Thank you for coming out. But yeah, no, my agent sent me this script, and I've been directing TV for 12 years, and I've really touched every rung of the ladder, but I still wasn't like, now it's time for a feature. I love the medium of television. I love directing television. I like the speed of it. I like the pace of it. I like staying with characters for a long time. And my agent has sent me this, and she's like, you should take a look at the script. I don't think you'll get it. She goes, not because she didn't believe in me, but she was like, every director's going out for this job because it's an amazing story. And I was like, oh, okay. She's like, I just think you should throw your name in the ring and let them know I don't even think they know that you're a director. And I was like, okay, and I read it, and I was like, oh, I must tell this story. Like, I really felt like I was Richard Montañez. Like, I was like, I am Richard Montañez. I mean, I've been told no, and I've been told, you're a woman, maybe don't do that, or, that opportunities maybe not for someone like you. And so I was just like, oh my God, there's such an amazing lesson in this. And so once I got the job, I fought for the job, and I berated them into giving it to me. And I think the reason they did was because of the tone. And I said, look, I don't want to make a movie about the Flaming Hot Cheeto. I want to make an amazing biopic of this guy. And I don't want to be so formulaic with it. I feel like, biopics just live and die on the vine of if that person had something exciting happening to them in their life. And so I said, I wanted to have heart and humor. And so it was hard because we were like, are we a comedy? No. Are we a drama? No. And so I wanted it to be entertaining. And this is so my personality as well. So I think it was like birth of that. So as I was doing my pitch to the studio, I couldn't find comps. You know what I mean? Like they were like, what this movie is like. And I was like, it hasn't been made yet because it's kind of a little Ron Howard in the sense of like I wanted to explore something thematically important, but it's also a little Adam McKay is a little journalistic, a little historical, a little
narration
with a little and a little Scorsese in the sense of a very strong point of view. And I was like, I really loved like McKay and Scorsese's point of view, but I knew I didn't want to break the fourth wall. But immediately I said, it has to be in his voice. So the original script was not in his
That's what I was going to
point of
ask
view,
you, because
yeah.
I think coming from his lens makes
Yeah.
it so interesting.
And it also gave us the liberty for those fantasy sequences, which we love.
Wonder Woman is my favorite.
Yes.
Where everybody's mouthing.
Yes, Tony Shalhoub. How great's Tony Shalhoub? Like, unrecognizable. People go, I know that actor, and they keep looking at him, and I was like, oh, Tony Shalhoub. But he came at the end, and his first scene that he had to shoot was the boardroom stuff. So we sent him the recordings ahead of time. He memorized them to Jesse's voice. And so, his first scene's like action, and he's like, you pendejos are out here. And we all were just laughing, and I was like, oh, this is gonna work. This is gonna work. And he goes, so what am I saying? I love that he just trusted that this is gonna work. Just go with it. He just trusted me. But because we were in his point of view, I got to do that freedom, but also the real Richard Montañez. I went down a rabbit hole of his speeches, and he's like a motivational speaker now, and he's so many things. He's really funny and charming and witty, but underneath that, he's super scary, and you're like, he could shank me right now. Like, you know, he still has like tattoos, and he's just like, so he's still that. He's super Christian now, but you know, he'll tell you about his past, and so he's so complex. He's not educated at all, but he's so smart. You sit with him, you're like, damn, this guy's smart.
That's what
So
the wife says in the movie.
yeah, you're the smartest man I know, and so putting that, putting the movie in his perspective, he's all of those things, and you're like, okay, how do we show that? And the first fantasy sequence is when he beat the shit out of his coworker, and that was from a story Richard told me, and he goes, you know, when I started, they were really mean to me, and this one guy, you know, he was just like, you know, he would spit his gum out in front of him as he was mopping, so he would have to clean the gum off the floor. And he was like, he didn't know I could beat his ass. I could beat his ass, but I didn't. I had to mind my gangster. And I thought that was the funniest thing. And that was, I mean, not funny. I mean, it's funny, like, haha now. I mean, not funny in the moment. But I thought it was funny that he's like, I had to mind my gangster. Like, just that rhythm and that language is like, that was the line. He's like, I had to mind my gangster. And so I told Richard, I was like, but what if you did get to kick his ass in the movie? Like, what if we just showed you kicking that guy's ass? And then that's what kind of spurred this, like, we're in his mind. Even you know, the parting of the sea, when he's going to meet Roger and Rico for the first time, Richard does tell the story like that. You know, he's like, it was amazing. Judy's like, that is not what happened. That is not what happened. And I was like, what if we showed both? So it was really fun to mine all of that from the real Richard and Judy, and then.
So that was your decision as a director. I wasn't sure if that was in the script of Linda, Yvette, Chavez.
No, well, Linda and I worked 2 years on the script, yeah. And but I told her I was my thing was my POV. It has to be in his voice, and I think voiceover can be a very lazy device. A lot of times it's like they're saying what you're seeing, and I'm like, I don't need you to say what I'm seeing. Yeah. And for me, I said I need the voiceover to betray what we're seeing. Like, he was really scared at times, but on screen he looks tough. Or, you know, I wanted it to just have a different function. And so I'm a big fan of Drunk History. Have you guys seen Drunk History? And so it was kind of born from that of like, what if, you know, what he's saying is, you know, betraying what we're seeing. What he's really feeling is one way, but what we're seeing is something else. And so Linda and I played a lot with that. And I told her, I was like, just watch Drunk History, because I think there's something there we can play with fantasy sequences. And it was about finding the language of the film, because you couldn't just have one that feels random. So we were like, where are they, and what are they doing to move the story forward? And there's a lot of you know, things in Richard's book that we wrote the script off of.
Actual lines that were taken from his book.
Lines, scenarios, things, you know, when he was a kid selling the burritos, that really happened. But there was a lot of repetitive stuff. So like, we looked at his life and we're like, these 3 things that happened to him are the same lesson. It's the same result. So let's just pick the most interesting one. And then we go, okay, burrito. All right, and then, you know, same thing throughout the factory stuff. We're like, okay, there was a lot of people mean to him all the time. We get it. We don't have to see that repetitively. You get it. And so I feel like, you know, we don't give the audience enough credit sometimes with stuff like that. And I'm like, they'll get it. They're fine. We're going to move on. And I don't know if you noticed, the movie has pace, you know. Mm-hmm. I didn't want to sit so long with things, and I feel like it's just a page turner, and you're just, by the time you're crying at something, then we hit you with a joke, and then we're moving on, and we're in the next scene, and we're in the next scene. The camera's rarely still, you know, there's just like, the pace of the film helps with the tone.
And how closely did you work with the editor to get that pace?
Yes, well, it was funny. We had 2 editors. Our first editor, you know, was with me through the shoot, assembled it, and did a great job. And then we switched in the middle of it, and Kayla came in, and it was about a 2-hour. It wasn't bad, you know what I mean? It was 2 hours, and I was like, oh great, like I can cut from there. And I was just looking at what I had to lift out. Like, okay, we're gonna have to lift out this 7-minute scene. We're gonna have to lift it, because you can't trim that much from scenes. And Kayla came in and she took a stab at it, and she showed me a 96. This movie is what she showed me, and she didn't lift one single scene. She was just efficient. And that was like how crazy, like how an editor can make or break your film. And like she was brilliant at, no, I just rearrange this, move this, And I shot it that way. I shot it like Legos. Like I was like, we can delineate it. We can actually put this here and put that there, or let's keep it linear. And she's like, yeah, I feel like, and then we just had such a great time. I had a great time with both my editors. They were really fantastic. But she's the one that went and just like tightened it up, and I was like, that's it. That's
6 minutes is kind of a sweet spot,
especially in this time of year. When you guys are watching a lot of long films. You still can go to dinner tonight.
So I really like that you wanted to subvert stereotypes also with this film and celebrate Mexican American culture like you did, which we Latinos particularly appreciate. Conversations that you had with Linda Eva Chavez about tone and structure and all of how you achieved that.
I hired, authenticity was my North Star with this. I am Chicana. I was a Chola. This is my dad. Like that's my dad. My dad sounds just like Richard. So the trick was to hire people that you have a shorthand with that understands that culture. I don't have to explain why tapatio is put on spaghetti. Like we know, like you and I know, we put tapatio on spaghetti. So I surrounded myself with other authentic storytellers, and like our costume designer, Elaine Montalvo, she, all her reference photos were her family, right? It was her family. Her family were farm workers. She was born in LA. Brandon Mendez, one of our production designers, all his references for the Montañez house was his photos from his childhood. He's like, this is paneling. I'm like, paneling? We all had paneling. And so, surrounding yourself with other people who want to make the same film as you. Federico, my DP, was amazing. We both wanted to make the same movie. We had the same references. We would like finish each other's sentences, and I was just like, oh, I'm so great. But the person who really nailed it was Linda Eva Chavez, the writer. And once I did get the job, the first thing I had to do was, I said, I want to blow up the script and bring in somebody who's of this community, and it was Linda. Linda was born in LA. She's a Chola. She was a Chola. She's like, she talks like that all the time. Like, she's like, I know, right? And but she went to Stanford. So you're like, wait, I'm so confused. She's like, we gotta lay Oedipus theory on this shit, And I was like, yes. No idea what she's talking about. She's way smarter than me. So we had a very shorthand, Linda and I. And we both immediately knew we wanted to do a love letter to the Mexican American community. And we wanted to portray Cholos. We just painted them with a brush of love. Like, even the backstory of Tony Romero, like, that was a true story of one of Richard's friends who was only dealing drugs to pay for his mom's chemo. And he goes, I don't have another skill. And then I remember one time, Richard, Linda and I sat with Richard early on, and we were getting all this story from him and information, and I said, so wait, Richard, tell me, why did you choose to be in a gang? Like, what was that about? And he goes, what do you mean choose? And I went, oh. And I really was so embarrassed, because I was like, you didn't choose it.
You have a lot of options, that's not the one you choose.
It's not the one you choose. Yeah. And he was like, it was survival, I had to. And so we knew, that's why, when he goes, it's the transition when he's a kid to, his early gangbanger years. He says, when the world treats you like a criminal, you become one. Yeah. And that line is so powerful to me with like what I want to do in this industry. If like all we ever see on screen is, negative images, not even stereotypes, because I feel like, if it's true, it's fine. I'm not offended by being a Chola. I just want to see the complexity of what that means. You know what I mean? And so when he's running from the cops, he goes, all right, stop before you start talking shit about why do Mexicans always gotta be gangsters in movies. I didn't make this shit up, I lived it. And so because it was a biopic, we kind of had a little more street cred with like, well actually all this stuff happened. And Richard was on set making sure
He was on set?
Yeah, not the whole time, but when he would come on set, he's like, that bandana's wrong. Or, you know, we didn't fold our pants like that. Like, he was very, very serious about us getting it right. And I hired these amazing actors. They were from that YouTube show, Cholos Try. I don't know if you guys watch that show. It's like Cholos Try white people shit. And like they try like kombucha and stuff like that. And they're so funny. And they're real cholos, and I told Saoirse in the meeting, I was like, I want those guys. Like, I don't want an actor putting on a bandana and doing an accent. Like, I want cholos, and so we flew them out to Albuquerque, and they're like, yo, this shit's fly, you know. But they're actors now. They're actors, and they have careers. They're in a lot of other shows, and I thought, yes, because I wanted that to be authentic, and I'm really proud of how we did show our community. And even like, you know, with the dad bacho, like that's true. You know, men don't say I love you. They don't say I'm proud of you. You know, and so whenever they do have that moment with the tide, he's like, can I say something? And even, you know, Richard's like, no. Men don't say it, and young men aren't ready to receive it in our communities. And so that scene was like so powerful because we were showing, you know, a crack in the veneer of what machismoism is.
Well, and as an actor too, how closely did you work with the actors in terms of, you know about that process? Did they spend time with each other? Like, did Jesse spend time with Richard?
Yeah, they met. Annie met Judy and Richard met Jesse. Jesse's a fantastic actor. I mean, he's been in this business 25 years. I've been a big fan of his for a long time, and he was always at the top of my list, but this is the first time he's gotten to show his full range in one movie. And he'll tell you, if he was here, he always goes, I've played, you know, I've been in a drama, I've been in a comedy, I've played a gangster, I've played a factory worker, I've played a farm worker, I've played, you know, and he goes, this is the first movie I got to do it all. I get to do it all in one movie. Like, we don't get these roles as Latinos. We never get this many bites at the apple. And so he felt the pressure to like get it right. And also we thank God for my TV background, because we were shooting 8 to 10 pages a day. We were flying, and the studio said so many times, you've got to cut these strips. You're never going to make your days. And I was like, of course we're going to make our days. Like, I'm used to shooting 8 pages a day. And I would slow down when we needed scale and scope for the movie, and you see when that happens. But there was like an elasticity to our schedule of like, we're going to bang through this stuff because I want to spend more time on this stuff. And then we're going to bang through this stuff. And Fede, my DP, was like, game. He's like, yeah. I was like, is there any day that worries you? And we're like, no. And there wasn't one day we dropped a scene or punted a scene. We got every single shot in 30 days and 108 sets.
Wow.
Yeah. 108 sets. But my point being, I needed an actor who was game for that rhythm. I was like, we don't have time to figure this out on set. We're gonna do it beforehand during prep, and we worked a lot. I would tape out, you know, this is the kitchen, and here's the stove, and so, you know, this is the blocking, but like, feel free to move within this, you know, thing. And Jesse would have questions, and we work it out. He had so many great ideas, but you know, he played four different decades.
I was going to ask you about that. That's
and so
the color palette sort of.
Color palettes were different on each decade. Fede and I figured out, and our production designers, Cabot McMullen and Brandon Mendez, figured out like how you knew where you were, the orientation of where you were in the timeline quickly, right? Like I don't like being disoriented in a movie, you know. Yeah. Like even in the factory, you know, we built that factory from scratch. Zero. Nothing was in that room.
And it used to be a
newspaper printing. Yeah.
Wow.
So there's shit up above you that's for newspapers, but I was like, it doesn't matter. Nobody cares. Nobody's gonna know what that is. Because they were like, it's gonna cost a lot of money to take that down. I was like, no, leave it. It's I don't know what it is, but it's great. And our production.
It's so realistic.
It's so realistic, but like they did an amazing job to build that from zero, and that was probably the biggest challenge of the movie, was building that factory. But yeah, everything worked, and they made it modular to where it was like, I need a conveyor belt in front of them. And everything was on wheels, so we could move the tumbler, we could move the conveyor belt, we could move the certain things, and then other things we couldn't, and we just kind of. So anyway, I love that in the factory you're never lost. You're like, yeah, I get it. That's the janitor. That's the walkway. Like you're settled and
you have your bearings.
You have your bearings, and I like that in film, because I want to focus on the characters. I want to focus on the story. So back to Jesse, I was like, you have to be. It's not about being fast. You have to be prepared, and you have to be prepared to pivot. Wow, say that fast. Be prepared to pivot quickly, like I am. Like if we had lightning, we had it was monsoon season. And you just have to pivot. You have to pivot quickly and make a lot of decisions. And we were prepared for that. And so that's how we got it done. And Jesse was 1,000% on board. And so to do that work at the rhythm in which the pace that we shot it was truly a talent.
I like, you're talking about the tone switches and so many different elements, the fantasy scenes and all that. And I also like that you decided, and I wondered how you decided to intersperse the story with like the actual news footage from the Chicano movement or the black and white style sitcom stuff that you did. How did all that come about?
I forgot about the sitcom. That was like, I just love like poking fun at like, isn't this funny? Because this wouldn't happen if we were, this wouldn't happen if I was a man, or like this wouldn't happen if that kid was white or whatever. And so, to show the extreme version of that, like Leave It to Beaver, I thought that would be funny. But mostly, that was my ode to Adam McKay. I love how he sets the table. Like anybody who can make a movie about the housing crisis interesting is like talented. And I loved that thing he did at the top where he's like, okay, this is what was happening in 2008. Interest loans, or The Big Short. The Big Short was it, sorry. And advice, when he's like, look, this is what was happening during this election when Cheney, blah, blah, blah. And he does it so fast. And he's like, got it?Ready? Okay, I'm moving on with the movie. Yeah, like he just sets the table. And so I felt like a lot of people don't understand the struggles that Mexican Americans went through in the 60s, but also still continue to go through. We have police brutality, we have discrimination, we have, housing crisis, we have, we don't have access to quality. There's so many things our communities face, and people look at us and technically we are white, right? Like our race is white, and so they're like, well, you're fine. And I'm like, well, we're not. And so that Chicano montage was kind of to explain it, and specifically for Vietnam. I think Latinos were the first to be sent off during that war, and we wanted to, go like you had two choices: shipped off to war or become a gangster. Like there was no opportunity in that moment for Chicanos, and so to see that quickly, like I don't want to give you a history lesson, but I do want to set the table for like, so this is what was happening. But that NBC News thing was like, our editor found this amazing archival footage of that particular time during the factory. Reaganomics was happening. PepsiCo did shut down thousands of factories, and theirs was being threatened to be shut down. And so to find that news clip to like back us up to say it. You're like, oh my God, this is exactly what we're talking about in the movie. And then that time lapse, I don't know if you remember the time lapse where 10 years passed by. I didn't want to do a Chiron, like 10 years later. Like I was like, what's an interesting way to see a passage of time that uses that news footage and what he's saying underneath. We see the factory, more people are getting laid off, more people are disappearing. The factory's becoming more empty, and yet he's in the exact same spot, mopping. Like not just the exact same spot as a janitor, but like he's in the exact same spot 10 years later. That was like what I wanted to accomplish, and that was
how he was stuck.
He was stuck in one place, and 10 years had passed. And all those graphics, Boxel did our visual effects, and I was like, I don't know what it's going to be. So let's do forklift passing, a guy with a box, a trash can, a conveyor belt. I want the tumbler moving because I don't know where I'm going to put the years, but I know I'm going to put them in the scene. I want them in the things. I don't know if it's on the conveyor belt. I don't know if it's on the floor. And so I said, we shot it, and I said, could you mock it up? Just I want to see if it works. And Boxel came back like within 24 hours, and they go, it works. and they did like very, sloppy, just like, just a test of it, and we were so excited. It was like, oh, this is going to be good. And it's one of our proudest scenes, Feather and I, because we really thought about, like, how do we do this? And to crack it was like, I think it took like 12 DP's minds, because Feather's in a DP chat group. And he asked them, he's like, you guys have any ideas on time passage? And they would send us clips, and I'm like, no, it's not that. Or that somebody would say, did you use this camera? And he would show me a demo of like that camera. I'm like, oh yeah, that's maybe more that. And so it literally took 100 brains to figure that one out.
So we know what some of the proudest scenes are. What did you feel was like the most challenging? What just like was
the building of the factory was like the biggest physical challenge. We shot this during COVID too. Mm-hmm. So we had masks and shields, and it was 120 degrees in Albuquerque. Like our camera trucks were melting into the pavement. So that was hard. Like, we shot 10-hour days because we couldn't break for lunch. I was really nervous. Like, I was like, I think, the crew needs a break. In this heat, they need to sit. But we had so much crew, you would need a football field, 2 football fields to be 6 feet apart to eat lunch, right? So logistically, like, you can't break for lunch. And so we rolled through. And now I'm never going back. Like, I love the 10-hour day. I was like, yeah, here, eat something, let's keep going. Because I always feel like things fall apart at lunch too, like, oh, you ate, and you come back, and you're like, sleepy, how many scenes do we have left? Yeah. So it felt like our momentum was just never lost. But yeah, I would say, not nothing, because, we had like I said, we had to shut down for lightning 10 times, and then you're like, okay, now we gotta do this in water, because now we don't have time for the coverage, and but I love that. I love working like that. I like it. You have 2 walls, no ceiling pieces, 1 camera, go. And it's 8 actors, and you're like, oh, okay. I mean, I really thrive in that environment. And like I said, I come from TV, and that happens all the time. Like, the set's not ready. We have this wall, and you're like, okay, so we can shoot against that wall, and you figure it out. And I find that that's the movie. That's the movie, not what you have planned in your.
Right. And you have to be able to be flexible enough to go with that.
Yeah, and also get everybody on board, right? Like, I'm sure my production designers would be like, no, we really wanted to show this. Can you please wait? And I'd be like, I can't. We gotta keep moving. And so I find, a director's job is to have a vision. And I don't care how we get to that vision. I'm really like, best idea wins. What's your idea? What's your idea? What's your idea? Best idea wins. But I won't compromise my vision, right? So I feel like when that stuff happens, like I said, we had lightning. We had to shut down, and we ended up having to go handheld, and it worked great in the scene where the guy calls them wetbacks in the parking lot. That was not meant to be handheld. We had these beautiful dolly shots in our head. We had beautiful, a lot of coverage. It was the man, the kid, Annie, Judy, Richard running out, a woman getting in the car, a woman looking. We had all these shots planned, and then it was like, lightning strikes, you have 12 minutes to get the scene. We're like, wow. And our Dennis, our A camera, put it on his shoulder. He's like, go, all right, go, action, go. We're like trying to get it all. And I felt like we didn't get it. And then when Liza assembled it, she goes, this is a great scene. I love that you went handheld. What a great choice. I really wanted to go handheld. It was like, no, we had to. And I was like, oh, that's not what I wanted. But it looked great.
Mm-hmm. The serendipitous moments.
Yeah, but that's the film. That's the filmmaking of it. That's what I like about it.
You had a lot of fantastic music in this as well. Yes. I love the Cisco Kid.
War,
Yeah.
You can't do a Chicano movie without war.
No.
Yeah.
So tell us about your references there, and then also your work with Marcelo Zarvas.
Marcelo Zarvos.
And then Diane Warren also.
I'm Diane Warren.
She pops up all the time.
I know. I love her to death. We had an amazing music supervisor, Vanessa Perry, Latina, and she and I, again, shortcut to the cultural references, right? And she's like, we need, I go, we do need, you know, we just were like, oh my God, Juan Gabriel, oh my God, Juan Gabriel, yes, we need Juan Gabriel. Like we both wanted to make a Chicano Bible of music, you know, in this film. And Mexican Power, Do It for La Raza. I wanted Cypress Hill so bad, but they weren't a hit. They weren't even born, I think, in the 70s. So, you know, like they were like 90s more.
Los Lobos?
We did not have Los Lobos. Did we? We did have a version of one of their songs.
Yes.
Yeah?
Yeah.
We did? Yeah. I think we did.
Maybe, but
Yes, I'm trying to remember the song.
Mas y Mas.
Mas y Mas, that's what it was. Thank you. And then, so, you know, where to put needle drops, where to compose was a big discussion. And I met Marcelo, I fell in love with him. I love the movies he's done. And I'm not musical. So my husband is here, he'll tell you, I hate music on in the car. I don't like the TV on when I'm at home. Like, I don't know, I live in silence. I'm like, shh. Thinking. So he was like, what are you thinking about music? I was like, I don't know. I don't feel like there's a lot of music in the movie. He goes, it's wall-to-wall music. I was like, oh, is it? And he's like, wall-to-wall. And there's not one scene that does not have music under
see,
it.
that tells you it's subtle music. I mean,
Yeah.
there's some things that you watch and like the music overpowers. And
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I just saw a film yesterday and I was like, oh my God, I can't move. I'm like, move out of the way, music.
Yeah. It does get in the way.
It gets in the way. Yes, he did an amazing job. If there wasn't a needle drop, there was score. And so Marcelo found a theme song for Richard and played it for me. I also, he figured out what I was allergic to. Because I was like, oh, I don't like that. And he goes, God, you really hate piano. And I was like, I do hate piano. I didn't even know I hated piano, but I go, for this movie, I don't like it. It's strings, it's guitar, it's violins, it's definitely the vibe of this movie. I mean, I might do another movie and love piano, you know, or love horns,
Yeah.
but I have a very, like, I knew what I didn't want. That's all I knew. I didn't know what I wanted. I knew what I didn't want. And so he would play me something, I go, I was like, give me a button. And then Diane, you know, my production offices were in a building that Diane owns, Diane Warren. And this is like 7 years ago. I would get in the elevator, she gets in the elevator, she's like, who are you? What do you do? What do you do? Who are you? Why are you in my building? And I was like, oh, I'm Eva, I'm on the 3rd floor. And she goes, I want to write a song for your movie. I said, oh, I don't have a movie. And she was like, well, when you make a movie, I want to do the music. And I
It's a
said,
good imitation.
yeah, she's great.
Yeah.
And then I go, well, I'm not a filmmaker. I'm in TV. And she goes, no, you got to make a film, and I'm gonna write the music for your film. And I was like, oh, okay. And then like a year would pass. She goes, when are you making that movie? And I was like, I don't make that movie. Like, she knows my name. Like, she's just like, you're the girl from the elevator, and you haven't made a movie. I have not.
You have to thank when
Yes.
you get an award.
Yeah, for sure. And then it was announced in the trades, Eva Longoria to direct Flaming Hot. She calls, I'm gonna write the song for your movie. I was like, we haven't shot the movie. Like, hang on. And then finally, but she was the first one I showed it to. I showed her the assembly. Because we were thinking of using it, you know, in a different spot, and I was like, you know what, let's see if Diane has an idea for this. And she sees the movie, and in the lobby of the screening, she goes, I got it. It's called Fire Inside, and it's about, and she just,
Fire Inside is actually on so many levels. Like,
yeah, so many levels of like, for a songwriter to really condense the entire movie into one song. What you're supposed to be feeling, what you're supposed to take away, like she's a genius about that. Like I'm like, wow, you just, you know, summarize the whole movie in one song, and it's about, you know, nothing can hold you back, and when you have a fire inside, like nobody's gonna stop you, nobody's gonna put that out, and it was exactly the spirit of the film. And then she got Becky G to sing, who was like my dream singer, because I was like, oh, we could get somebody like Becky G, who's Chicana, from LA, big star. Like, she was just like, oh my God. And she watched the movie, and she called me, and she goes, so I watched it 3 times in a row. Like, she watched it by herself in her room just to see if she wanted to do the song. And then she goes, I cried. I called, Mom, you gotta come watch this movie. Her mom came in. She goes, we watched it again. She goes, then my family came home and she goes, you guys, we gotta watch this movie. And they watched it 3 times, back to back to back, just because they were so proud as Mexican Americans to be like, yes, that's us. She goes, that's my story. And I felt like everybody who watched it, Diane says this. Diane goes, I am Richard. And I'm like, yes. Like, we all felt like scrappy about.
You should get like a Yo Soy Richard.
Yo Soy Richard. Sure.
Yeah.
Yes, for sure.
Well, and I love that. It feels so authentic and loving, and in a non-Latina's hands, it could have been very different. But it's all about the power of resilience and all of that. And I also feel you directed that wonderful documentary we were just talking about outside, La Guerra Civil.
Yeah.
And you've done so much. I was just looking at your bio with all the TV and all of that. Oh my God, I was exhausted just reading that. I mean, you're a dynamo. It's just
thank you.
talk about the fire.
Thank you.
So where does that come from?
I don't know. Everybody asks me that. I was like, I'm a 4th child, so I feel like I had to fight for attention, food, my voice, you know, like, it was like, oh, I'm here too. But I mean, meaning like, I think I got really scrappy from like the way I grew up. And I grew up as the black sheep of my family. All my sisters are like blonde and hazel eyes and really light skin, and I came out like a chocolate chip. Like I was like dark hair, dark eyes, dark skin. And people would come up to my mom and they go, your daughters are so beautiful. And who's this? And I would be like, I want them too. So I remember going, okay, I'm not beautiful. I'm gonna be funny. That's what I remember, like making that choice. And then I said, and I also said, I'm gonna be smart. I'm gonna be the smart one. My sisters can be the pretty ones. I'm gonna be the smart one. And so I feel like that, that spirit of like, I'm going to do something so important and different than you guys, has brought me here. And I just remember also, like, people think I'm an actor turned director. I've always been a director and a producer. I've always been, you know, I moved to LA, I was a PA, I was an AD, I was like really behind the camera, and then fell into acting. I used to produce this show at the comedy, at the Improv. It was the Latino night at the Improv, and I would have to watch all these VHS tapes of comedians, really bad comedians, and some good ones. But it was like, you know, people were like trying to get their break, and I was like, oh, how many bad jokes can I hear? And I had to watch all the VHS tapes. I would book the comedians, I'd figure out how much they get paid, we get a percentage of the door, how do we divvy that up? You know, how many beers do we sell? Because then we get a piece of the beers. Like, it was, and I was 23, you know, and I remember loving it. And then we did a lot of live events, and I produced a lot of these events downtown for Cinco de Mayo, and I would book the bands, and I would book like, so I was just always behind the camera. I was, and so when I was on Desperate Housewives, I used Desperate Housewives as my film school, and I just paid attention, and I asked constant questions, and they let me load the camera, and they would let me pull focus, and they would let me do things. And I was like, what is a lens? What does a number mean? What is this? We shot on film. We're one of the last shows to switch digital, so we shot on film like 7 years before we switched over. So I was like, what's checking the gate? What is a gate? What is it, you know? And they were like, oh God, he was on set again. Because I would just always be on set. And I was like, can I hold the boom? I want to do the boom. I'll do the boom. You know, I wanted to know everything. And I remember when I directed my first short. And then, you know, this is back in the day when we shot 24 episodes a year. None of this 6 to 8 bullshit. You know, for a decade of my life, that's 24 directors. That's 240 directors that I have witnessed. So I learned a lot from them of what to do and what not to do. I'm like, wow, that guy's horrible. You know, or like, oh.
Were there directors every week too?
Yeah, every episode's different. We had recurring ones, you know, so there was like these 3, David Grossman, Larry Shaw, who I learned so much from, and they were like our in-house, so like every 3rd episode was them. And I remember telling David Grossman, I was like, I think I want to direct. He goes, you've been directing. Because I would like block block my own scene. And when my co-star is my husband, he's like, I think I want to grab a coffee on this side. I was like, don't you fucking go to the window. Don't you, that's 2 more setups. We're going to be here till 8. No, sit down. You stay there. I'll get the coffee. I'll get the coffee right here. Or like that. Yeah, we can even do it in a 2-shot. I can even turn this way. And can you just do this? Like, I just wanted to... Like, I was like very fit. So David Grossman, I was like, I think I'm gonna direct. He goes, you are a director. And I'll never forget that. He's like, you are. And I was like, oh my God, I am. I think I am. And so that was,
Between him and Diane Warren.
12 years ago. Yeah, exactly. Everybody saw it.
Yeah.
Yeah, before me.
I got the high sign, and I wonder if it's like we're blinded by the light here, but I wonder if we have time to take a question.
Oh, I love it.
Somebody right there.
Oh, yeah, hi.
Hi.
Yes,
I'm up. First of all, I just want to say thank you. As a Chicano American, right? As a Chicano, right? Mexican American growing up, having experienced a grandfather who was discriminated growing up against, heard the Abraham Quintanilla speech, you're American, but always be proud that you're a Chicano.
Yeah.
And growing up on films like American Me, Mi Familia, Blood In, Blood Out, it's beautiful to see a film that humanizes cholos, right? That really talks about our struggle, that brought about film footage from the 1968 Chicano walkouts in East LA. That was a true love letter to Chicanos across the nation, not just Los Angeles.
Yeah.
And I just want to say thank you so much.
Thank you.
And that was so much. I'm sorry. I know we want the question. And also, I want to just a quick mention to Aristotle and Dante.
Yes.
A beautiful Mexican-American gay love story in the United States. That was beautiful as well. And let me just tell you, the scene with you in the hospital, where you're like, why am I excited? I'm just like bawling my eyes out.
That was another great project, Aristotle and Dante, by a Latina director, H. Alberto. She's amazing.
And that was at Sundance last year, too.
Yeah, it was a lot of festivals, but yeah, it was a Sundance. Yeah.
So thank you for allowing me time to say thank you so much to you.
Thank you so much.
I appreciate it.
But I will say, just, all those films you mentioned are 20 years old. And we were, Stacy Smith from Annenberg, she did the report of like, the study of like, we're not only not in TV and film, we're invisible, we're being erased. Like, when you don't hire and don't get to tell these stories, it has an effect on society.
4%.
Yeah. And we were going backwards. It used to be 7%, now we're 4%. We're like, we're in the wrong direction.
Yeah.
But she goes, that there hasn't been an American-born Latino, like a Chicana director in 20 years.
Wow.
The last studio-directed film by a Latina was 19 or 20 years ago.
Wow.
And I was like, we can't get a film every 20 years.
No.
That's crazy. That's crazy to me. I was like, no, that has to be wrong. There's amazing, international directors doing amazing things, but like American-born Latina.
They always talk about the Three Amigos, who are amazing, but it's like, they're from Mexico.
Yeah.
How about the local?
Yeah, exactly.
American-born. Okay,
There's a woman.
Yeah, that would
Oh,
be.
yeah.
Thank you so much. I am Mexican born and raised, so it's so interesting for me to see also the Mexican American community. And I hope we can be as one because we have the same roots. So I just want to thank you for this, and also I'm gonna stalk you more because now I'm more inspired by you. I didn't know so much about you, and I hope someday to achieve what you have achieved. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Wonderful questions. Chingona.
Yes, Claudia. La otra chingona. But I will say too, it's funny you mentioned Mexico. We screened in Mexico and in Morelia, Mexico City. I mean, we premiered in Mexico, and the response, it was the #1 country outside of the United States of views from Disney Plus, and the way they have loved this film because they feel seen. Mexicans, for Mexicans to accept a Mexican-American film, there's such a divide sometimes of like, in Mexico I'm the American, in America I'm the Mexican. Oh, you're Mexican. Like,
Yeah, but each place.
Yeah.
Well, La Guerra Civil.
La Guerra Civil was about that, the documentary I directed. But it was just, I was so overwhelmed with the amount of love that Mexico, specifically the country of Mexico, and the people gave us in Morelia, like at the film festival. They were just like, this is such a great representation of us, and they felt like it was us, and that made me feel really good. I was like, yes, it is your story. It is your story. It's not mine. It's not just ours over here on this side of the border. It's everybody's story. We also, everybody all over the world. We had German press, and this guy, Germany went crazy for it. Australia went crazy for the movie. But the German guy goes, "We don't have hot Cheetos here," and so I bought a bag, and it was like $22 a bag because they don't have it there. He goes, "So I thought I'd eat it in the interview." I was like, I don't think you should eat that right now. And he ate it, and he was like, "Okay, so tell me." And he was dying, and he couldn't finish the interview. He had to leave. I was like, yeah, if you are not used to flaming out, they're hot. And he almost died. So, and then Australia, somebody tried to do that, and they're like, "We don't have them here, so I'm going to try." And I was like, "Please don't. Let's just finish the interview, and then you can kill yourself later."
So Frito-Lay should be paying you for these things.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
I'm so sorry. I know someone is trying to get a message across. Is it okay to take more questions or not?
Big question.
Last question. Last question. Okay. All right. Okay. You.
Okay. You mentioned that when you were reading the book that you felt very aligned to Richard. So who's your Judy?
Oh, who's my Judy? My husband's my Judy, yeah. He's always behind me, especially, but that's the one line we love in the movie the most is if you want to survive this crazy world, get yourself a Judy. And Judy, when we showed Richard and Judy the film, he couldn't speak, he was crying so much. And Judy was like, "Yeah, that's right, that's how important I was." So she was very excited about her portrayal. But thank you, Claudia, for this. Thank you.